Hare Krishna, welcome to our channel, Bhagavad-gita, here it is, because we happen to have Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and my name is Lavangalatika. So, we're in the 13th chapter, which is a very helpful chapter. Of course, all of Bhagavad-gita is very helpful, but it goes, how to say, it's a gradual and also a structured way to go through the knowledge in such a way that we can utilize it for our self-realization. And the 13th chapter kind of describes the situation we're in. Stay with us.
Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalang.
So, yes, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna because Arjuna was confused. And being confused is not particularly how do you say? It's not necessarily a good thing as such, but being able to admit that one is confused, that one doesn't know everything. I remember a long time ago when I was very young, it was kind of my criterion when I met new people, if I could kind of let them trust them, if they were able to say, I don't know. Because if you're not able to say that you don't know, then you're not able to be open to being wrong, and you're also not able to be open to new knowledge, to adjust your worldview and your action when you gain new information and new insights. So in that sense, to take up spiritual life, as we said in that in that chunk of verses a little earlier, 8 to 12, when Krishna describes knowledge, he starts with humility. And the second one is pridelessness. So either way you look at it, that is how knowledge starts. Because if we can't accept that we don't know everything, we will not be able to take in anything new. So today we are reading text 22, and maybe I should get on with it. Here is the Sanskrit. Purusha prakriti-stho hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanang guna sangosya sadasad yoni janmasu, which I think is one of the verses. If you like to learn verses by heart, then this is also one of the core verses you could pick up and put it on your list. And the translation is as follows. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. So how do you meet with good and evil in various species? It is because of reincarnation. When we die, we take birth in a new body. All of this is dependent on our activities, on our desires, on our karmas. And here we get to understand that this is due to our association with the three modes of nature. What is the three modes of nature, you may ask, which is a very good question. And fortunately for us, the next chapter is called the three modes of material nature. So we will get into it more when we get there. But it's different aspects of nature. Everything is generally, mostly in one of the modes. We have three modes of nature, and sometimes it's influenced by a combination of two of the modes, and that's kind of how everything has different flavors, or atmospheres, and then we become more conditioned by a specific combination of the modes, and that means our consciousness will be different, and our activities will be different, and the result will also be different. Purport. This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another, just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on, and in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. Yeah, so it's important to understand how things work here in this world when we're in it. And there is a saying that you can't ask a fish about the water because they don't really see the water, because they're so immersed in the water that they don't even notice it. I don't know. I haven't personally spoken to any fish about the matter, but it's a good example. If we're very much immersed in something, in Swedish we have an expression that's called home blind, and I don't know if there is an equivalent in English, but also, you visit someone and you can notice their house smells in a particular way, not necessarily in a bad way, but very specific. And the people who live there, they don't notice it. And when you come from the outside, you do notice it. And when you go to the outside, you go out from there, then you'll bring that smell onto your clothes. But while you're in that atmosphere, you don't notice it. So we're here, and we're so immersed in this specific body we're in at the moment. And this body is actually a combination of the three modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance, in a certain in specific proportions. So we hear that the animals are more in the mode of ignorance. Demigods are more in the mode of goodness. Human beings are more in the mode of passion. And yes, as I'm saying, next chapter we will get into it more and get a better understanding. Just like if you come in contact with the Ayurvedic system of medicine, then it's everything is made up of three doshas, the bodily qualities of Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. And when you hear about it, I have always had a rather robust health, so I haven't been, but I have had friends, and you start to get an understanding of these things, and then it becomes very natural that you can see that this balance is sometimes weighing over to one side or the other. But if you don't know anything about it, it's just words. So the three modes of nature, also after a while, they become mode of ignorance. It's like the dark mode. It covers us, that keeps us from understanding our spiritual nature. And if you're a plant, you can't really do anything, you can't really know anything. There is still consciousness in there, the soul is still in there, but you're very covered. And animals also, animals don't have a choice. They cannot decide to do something different. Like if you're a tiger, you can't be a vegetarian. And if you're I can't think of animals, but you have animals, they will only eat nuts and fruits and so on. They are not going to eat dead animals. And that's not a question of choice. That is just the way their body is structured. And as human beings also, our body has certain tendencies. The human society is basically run on the mode of passion, which is based on greed and desire, and that kind of drive that doesn't give you any peace, that causes friction, that causes frustration. And then when that frustration comes, and then you turn over into anger and destruction, and maybe drinking or drugs, then you're over on the side of mode of ignorance. Or if that makes you question, put a stop at things and thinking, I need to go for a walk in nature, I need to breathe deeper, I need to pick up some form of meditation, I need to cut down on alcohol and cigarettes, then you're sliding over on the mode of goodness side. So as a human being, we can choose, but still we are still very much conditioned by the body we are in at the moment. And because of that conditioning, our desires will be a little bit different. And because of those desires, our activities will be different. And as human beings, we are recommended to cultivate the mode of goodness, because it may not come automatically. To some people it does come automatically. They will be peaceful, they will be drawn to meditation, they will naturally avoid alcohol, and they will naturally be vegetarians. They will naturally be gentle and caring towards other people. They will naturally be drawn to studying knowledge and to practicing spiritual life. But for for the rest of us who may have other tendencies, it is very helpful to have a kind of structure, to have a kind of process. And therefore Bhakti Yoga, and also most religions, they have some regulations. And then we come as modern people and our, how to say, spiritual muscles or religious muscles, they have often atrophied to the point where they're hardly even there anymore. And it becomes, how to say, it's such a foreign thing to think about spiritual life. And then we view religions as these places where people are told what to do by some kind of priest, and why can't people just be allowed to do whatever they want? The thing is, it's actually a deep question to speak about doing whatever we want, because what is free will? How much of these desires comes from my past lives, my conditioning in this life, the pushing of our senses? And where even am I in the middle of this? The spirit soul that sits in the heart, that is the actual person, that is the actual source of consciousness. But in general, when we're in this world, we've forgotten our spiritual identity. So if I want to enjoy a good meal, that is universal. Everybody wants to enjoy a good meal. But if I have a human body, maybe I would like to include some, ice cream in it, or some, I don't know, some baked potatoes, as I'm very fond of potato. If I'm a tiger, as we said, then I would like to run out and grab some other animal and rip into them with my teeth, and have that fresh blood where the heart is still beating. To me, that would be horrible. Worse than horrible. I couldn't even imagine. Because our senses are different. Our conditioning by the modes of nature are different. And if I'm a cow, then I live out in Alviksgård, which is in the country, and we have some cows there. And in the summertime, these cows are perfectly content to cover the grassland, pick up the grass, chew the grass, swallow the grass, sit down and kind of, I don't know what you call it in English, but the cows have this process where they kind of, that food comes up again, and then they chew it one more time, and then it goes down. And in this way, they are able to convert grass, which, like, I can't even imagine eating grass. It's like there's nothing there. There's some fiber and some grassy smell, and I don't think a human being can live off of grass. Cows can do that, and they live off it. And not only do they live off it, but they transform it into milk, which is such a rich, beautiful, satisfying, nourishing food. So it's like magic. But the cow herself, perfectly happy, going out on that field, eating grass all day, chewing grass all day. That's that meal. So this is so much dependent on the body we're in, because obviously when we understand the system of the transmigration of the soul, we can understand, like sometimes they say that in the Hare Krishna movement, how are the women seen as less? Of course, geographically, I'm sure you will find some temple where women are seen as less, but that's not really our philosophy. Our philosophy is this: we are born into a body dependent on our actions in our past life. And in general, we see that having the body of a woman means there's a little more struggle, a little more difficulty, a little more complications to life, which in a sense means the karma is a little worse. But that is very little, because we're still humans. The thing is, I've probably been a man in another life. This man who stands there feeling superior because he's not a woman, probably been a woman in another life, possibly will be a woman in the next life. So these things are not very important. But what is important is to understand that I am the soul in the body, and everybody around me is the soul in the body. We have a verse back in an earlier chapter which says, a learned sage sees with equal vision. You know, a cow, a learned sage, a dog eater, which is considered like the lowest level of civilization for a human being. When you eat dogs, you're not supposed to eat dogs. You're also not supposed to eat cows, not because they're low, but because they're on the other end. They are such elevated souls. Actually, if a cow is allowed to die a natural death, not being killed by a human, they will be human in their next life and be able to take their next step in spiritual life. Krishna always surrounds himself with cows. He loves the cows. So, it's not just a superstition to not kill the cows because you're Indian and that's what somebody told you. It's very practical. The cow is much more useful alive, and killing a cow is horrendously bad karma, so we don't want to do that. But when we understand this, that we keep transmigrating one body after another, dependent on our activities, depending on our desires, depending on our consciousness at the time of death. Now, in this chapter, we understand the situation even better, and the next chapter we will get a better sense of the three modes of nature. So, how he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. This is called Krsna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krsna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another, because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change this conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the signs of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long-cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. So, this is not something we are hoping to attain after death. It's not that kind of eternal blissful life. It is the fact that we are eternally blissful by nature. And when we can reawaken that original spiritual consciousness, that is what we will have. Eternal blissful life, and we will have it here and now. So that is like, I feel I get sidetracked today by my own ideas, but that's what I started to say. When we come as a modern rational person taking a look at religion, and it just looks like it's a way to be told what to do by some people who may not have the same experiences that we have, and therefore we are reluctant to listen to them. But here Krishna explains that when we understand that we are not this body, we are the spirit soul, when we understand that the spirit soul by nature is eternally blissful in life, and then when we understand that as long as we identify with these bodies, and as long as we hold on to material desires, because that is the definition of material desire, something that is separate from Krishna, something that I want for myself. So it is not that when we give it up, we have nothing. When we give it up, we will have our pure spiritual desire, and we will experience an unlimited, dynamic, interesting exchange with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And even before we see him face to face, we will have this sense growing from within, this level of satisfaction that comes from being connected to Krishna's service. So, we're not getting there if we're just running after the impulses of our senses. So therefore, often religion will aim to regulate our sensory activities. You know, there are some regulations on what we eat, there are some regulations on how we associate with the opposite sex. There are some time is spent on spiritual religious practices. All of this is a way to train our mind and senses and desires to come back and to focus and to be still enough to connect with the spirituality that is actually already within us. So maybe it used to be that people would do their religion because somebody told them that's what they had to do. Nowadays it's more like we have to understand why, we have to understand how, we have to understand what. We're not just going to blindly jump into it. And I think that's a good thing. Bhagavad-gita also thinks it's a good thing. When you approach a spiritual teacher, you will listen submissively, you will take a humble position, but you will also ask questions. You will not accept it blindly. But the more we read Bhagavad-gita, the more we can understand this in a good way, in a more complete way. So that's the way to go. We're modern people. We want to understand things. So here, let's understand why we are stuck in a material body that constantly gives us complications and trouble, and let us understand what we can do about it. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,